Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Alisha, and I am working with Stop Poaching Now. This is an educational webinar about elephants and rhinos and the crisis that is happening right now with poaching. So thank you so much for being here. I have a little, oh, shoot. Let me talk to tech support. Tech support, I need to be able to share my screen. I'm the host now, excellent. All righty, so let me share with you guys a little bit of the educational program that I do when we visit classrooms or when we visit environmental clubs. So just to let you know a little bit about me, I'm also a substitute teacher with the LA Unified School District. And I also help out at Stop Poaching Now as the Director of Education. So we go out to schools and we talk to the students. So one of the things I like to ask the students is about any sort of an amazing experience they've had with a wild animal. I want them to think about something they saw perhaps in a zoo or when they were traveling, something that sort of sparked some excitement in their heart that made them feel like they were witnessing magic at that very moment. And I always like to share something that to me feels like a little bit of magic. Now, when I was younger, I was lucky enough to go down to Baja California in Mexico. And they have this amazing trip that you can take where you go out into the lagoons where the gray whales go to have their babies. And you're on this tiny little boat. And here come not only the gray whale mother, but they bring their babies with them. I don't know why they approach the boats. We're not trying to feed them. We're not trying to coax them over in any way. I'm wondering if it's just curiosity on the animal's part. But I can tell you that everyone on that boat right now is squealing like a small child. It is an amazing thing to see animals out in the wild being who they are. It's magnificent. So I'm going to stop talking just for a second so you can see what I got to do at that moment, which was pet that baby gray whale. Unfortunately, I've never made it to Africa in person, but I hope to one day. And perhaps you've had an amazing experience. If anyone is out there, I know tech support will tell me if you're trying to say anything on Facebook. So please let me know. I would love to hear what you guys are thinking. So moving on to conservation and why it is so critical. Now, one of the interesting things about conservation is that not all species are created equal. Now that seems very strange to say. How can we rate one species higher than another in terms of what is more important? Well, the answer is this. Some are considered keystone species. A keystone species is one that enriches the ecosystem in a significant way through their activities. So their effect is disproportionate to their numerical abundance. So to give you a sort of easier way to wrap your head around that concept, let's look at this arch. You see the keystone right here in the middle? What would happen if I remove the keystone? I'm sure you're thinking, well, the arch would collapse. And that is exactly what happens when we remove a keystone species from an ecosystem. Their removal initiates changes in the ecosystem structure, and it leads to this cascading, we call it trophic cascades, but it leads to this snowball effect in terms of biodiversity. So the reason we may value a keystone species more than another one is because by protecting them, we protect all the animals that live with them. So let me introduce you to one of my favorite keystone species, and that is the elephant. These are amazing animals, and I hope that anyone out there has spent some time seeing these animals. Elephants are the great land architects of our planet. They are known as ecosystem engineers. Now, if we were in a classroom, I would say, can anyone think of another ecosystem engineer? So I hope you're yelling out an answer wherever you are. An ecosystem engineer that I think a lot of us are familiar with in North America is the beaver. These are species which create and destroy structures within an ecosystem. Now, the elephant, they will search for water. They will dig holes, but then other animals will then use those same holes to drink from. They will eat tree leaves and seeds, but then through walking far, far away and doing what one does as an animal, which is pooping, yes, they leave behind seeds that can be up to 50 miles away. So those tree species are then spreading. So where elephants live, the flora and fauna flourish, and this protects the biodiversity of the planet. Unfortunately, just between this time frame right now, we lost 68% of the population. This isn't even updated to where we are now in 2021. But before we go on to conservation and why it is so important to protect them, I wanted to have you get to know these animals a little bit. I always think it's kind of fun to know something about them. They are beautiful, but do you know anything else about them? So let me introduce you to rhinos first. So rhinos have three very cool adaptations. Rhinos are herbivores. What's an herbivore? An herbivore is an animal that eats only plants. You are correct if you are answering me at home. Now, rhinos, there are two different types of rhinos, the browsers and the grazers, and their lips are very important. That's how you can figure out which one is which. So let's see if you can figure out which one is the browser and which one is the grazer. Now, the white rhino here, you can see that their lips are kind of wide and flat. They're sort of like a lawnmower. And our black rhino here has a hooked lip that they use to pull plants, pull leaves off of bushes, to pick what they want to eat. Can you guess which one is a browser and which one is a grazer? There's our grazer and there's our browser. Give yourself a pat on the back if you got it correct. Another thing about rhinos is that they have really, really tough skin. In this photograph here, you can see a lot of scratches on the rhino's skin. And why do they need such tough skin? They need protection against thorns and branches. Could you imagine one of us brushing up against this? We would not take it very well. Another thing about rhinos is that they've partnered with a bird called an oxpecker. There you are, there's that oxpecker. Now, this isn't a rhino, obviously, but you can see the oxpeckers at work here. So any guess as to what they're doing? They are cleaning him. They're pulling off bugs, they're pulling off parasites, which is kind of a cool partnership if you think about it. Everybody wins. Now here's a little bonus about rhinos, and I think usually the young children love this part. Rhinos mark their territories with piles of dung. These are called a midden, and if you can imagine a pile of dung up to 60 feet wide, you'll get an idea of the kind of smell that can be created to mark a territory. So moving on to elephants. So I like to ask people, how many people, if we were to take a bunch of people and put them on a scale and then put an adult elephant on the other side, how many people, let's say adults, would equal one adult elephant? Do you think 20 would balance the scale? Let's figure it out. Now remember, this is how big they are. So maybe 20 doesn't work. There's our 20 people. We're adding them to the scale. And if anyone is here, give me a Give me a yes or a no in the comments and tell me if I should keep going. And if you said yes, you are correct. That is not enough people. Let's add some more. We are now up to 40 people. Is that enough to equal one elephant? You're right, I need to keep going. So we now added 60. Keep going or should I stop? If you said to keep going, you win again. We need 80 people to equal one adult elephant. Now let's look at some adaptations elephants have. They live in a really hot and dry habitat, so they need to stay cool. One of the ways you can tell the difference between an African and an Asian elephant are their ears. If they're really big, they are an African elephant. If they're smaller, you're looking at an Asian elephant. So how does that elephant stay cool in the summer? Yes, they can throw them water on themselves if they're at a watering hole. Sometimes they use dirt as sunscreen, but they have another built-in cooling system. Anybody have an idea where it is? If you said the ears, you are correct. And what you're looking at there is their blood vessels. And by waving their ears, they cool themselves off. Now, with elephants, communication is incredibly important in an elephant herd. So I'm going to let you hear. Now that's an elephant trumpet, very famous way for them to communicate, but maybe you don't know about something else they can do. Let me introduce you to the rumble. Close your eyes and try to imagine this being an elephant. That is a sound not a lot of us associate with elephants, but it is one of the key ways they communicate with each other. And how do they do that? Well, it's not just with their ears, it's also with their feet. Now, if we were to take an X-ray and look at this elephant's foot, you can see here, there are their bones. And one of the interesting things about an elephant, one of the largest land mammal, is that they walk around on their tiptoes all day. But if you look back here, there's a big fleshy pad. And that fleshy pad picks up the vibrations through the ground from that rumble. And that is one way elephants can stay in touch with each other from very far away. We're going to take a quick detour to look at an elephant's tusk. Now, an elephant's tusk, does anyone know what it is? I mean, is it a horn? It's actually their teeth. Now, if you were to look at your incisors right here, that's what an elephant's tusk is. It's coming straight down out of their skull. And it is, unfortunately, the reason why elephants die when people take their tusks in poaching, because it is part of their entire skull. So going back to their teeth, besides their tusks, they need special teeth to grind grass, their molars. And what's really interesting about the molars is that they work on sort of a conveyor belt system. Now, a lot of you may be familiar with the fact that sharks replace their teeth, but you may not realize that elephants do the same thing. Right here, you can see the molars that were being used, but back here, you can see where the molars were coming in. And then they would move forward on the conveyor belt and start being used to grind down all the grass. One more detour for the elephants before we move on, and that's because I really want to emphasize how similar humans are to elephants in a lot of ways. Elephants live in societies that are matriarchal. For the kids, if you don't know what matriarchal means, that means that it's led by females. They love to bond through touch and through smell. And they are very much like us when it comes to communication and cooperation. If you were to look at this picture, you see a lot of humans. There's an emergency happening right here, all coming together to help with whatever the issue is. And if we move on, you can see elephant society behaving in somewhat the same way. Here the elephants are at a watering hole, having a fabulous time, clearly. But then there's an emergency. If you look right here, there's a small infant that is in the water and is unable to pull themselves up on the bank. The mud, they keep sliding back in. And if you watch, you'll see that it's not just that baby's mother running to the rescue, it is the entire herd. Every elephant jumps in and gets involved. Even this one is more of a juvenile over here, trying to figure out a way to get in and help solve the problem. And there you go, our happy ending. There's the baby right there. You'll see that elephant reaches out with their trunk to make sure that the baby's okay. The same way you'd comfort a child that had been in a frightening situation. Now, I always like to pause right here because I want to show you the way elephants communicate, not just with each other, but also with humans. Now, this is taken from a website on YouTube called Elephant News. And I love it because, well, I'll let you watch and then I think you'll see why I love it. Sorry. There we go. Oh, I just heard that my screen isn't showing. So let me try that again. Okay, can you guys see my screen now? Okay, great. Sorry about that, guys. You know, technical world, right? So here we are, we're on a sanctuary. And a man on a tractor is coming out with some food. And watch what the elephants do. So I love that video because I love how you can watch the elephant walk right past the food and go straight to the person bringing it and begins talking to him, telling him how excited he is that he's there. And to me, that is sort of an amazing thing that they are not only communicating with each other, but with us. Now, one of the sad things about how emotionally complex elephants are is that they actually suffer the same sort of stress that humans can. They do suffer from PTSD when they are orphaned. And additionally, elephants also mourn, very similar to the way humans mourn. They always remember when they lost a member of the herd, and they will have entire rituals based around mourning that elephant. Elephants are highly sensitive and caring animals, much like humans. They are highly intelligent with complex emotions, feelings, compassion, and self-awareness. Yet they can't protect themselves from habitat loss, habitat degradation, or poaching. And that's why it's up to us to save these amazing creatures from extinction. To give you a simple sort of math, more elephants are currently being killed in Africa than are being born. Looking at the numbers, there are 3 elephant species in Africa and Asia. We have the savanna elephant, currently listed as vulnerable, the forest elephant, and the Asian elephant, listed as endangered. Going to the rhinos, we have 5 species in Africa and Asia. The southern white, the black rhino, which is critically endangered, and the northern white. I'm sure when you look at the numbers for the southern and the black, you're sort of struck by how few are left. But now let's show you the northern white. Right now, we only have 2 left. We lost the last male in 2018. So in all likelihood, we will see the extinction of the northern white rhino in our lifetime. Moving into Asia, we have the Indian, the Sumatran, and the Javan rhino. As you can see, their numbers are also critically low. Why are we losing them? What are the threats? Well, there's 3. Primarily is a loss of suitable habitat. Humans are expanding more and more. We're using land for grazing. And when we push into wild areas, we push the animals out. And also by pushing into wild areas, we run into human-wildlife conflict, which has a lot of issues for both humans and obviously the wildlife. And then lastly, the main threat is poaching and the illegal wildlife trade. Going back to the first one, habitat loss. Not too long ago, wildlife had almost endless habitat to roam and feed. However, space for animals is becoming smaller and smaller as the human population grows. Did you know that human expansion is the biggest threat to large mammals such as elephants, hippos, and lions? And only 7% of Africa is protected for wildlife. Over the last 600 years, hundreds of species of plants and animals have gone extinct in Africa due to human activities. Let's look at human-wildlife conflict next, because this is something we can fix. Humans are smart. We have these great big brains. It's time for us to put them to use. So when we have all of these animals and humans trying to coexist in the same spot, we know that both of them suffer. Farmers suffer economically from the loss of crops and livestock. In more serious cases, people are injured or killed. Entire communities can suffer if buildings or structures are damaged. When it comes to the wildlife, some populations decline or even become locally extinct as a result of extensive conflict. And it is really important that we find solutions. So one of the best ways to reduce conflict is to carefully plan the placement of crops, such as a maize field, before they are planted. This is called land use planning. Elephants tend to follow the same route over and over, and it's been the same for them for hundreds of years. If people look at these routes before they plant, we could simply move the fields elsewhere, and then the elephants never actually come into contact with the fields and aren't tempted to eat it. Because obviously they're like us. If you're going to have an easy fast food meal, they're going to have an easy fast food meal. But it's not always possible to move a field of crops. So there are a lot of deterrents people can use to keep elephants out of their crops. One of my favorites is the fact that they can grow chili peppers. Elephants don't like chili peppers. So if there's chili mixed in with the other crops that they're growing, they're not going to eat it. You can use bright lights like fireworks. You can make noise. You can mark the territory with other elephants' urine to kind of shoo them away. You can use more of a high cost solution, such as an electric fence. But if a village were to come together and go in on electric fence together, financially becomes much more feasible. Or you can do sort of a low cost one, which is digging a trench. Now, I want to go back to my favorite one, which is beekeeping. I think this is a incredibly smart, very clever way to deter elephants from crops. That also has a side bonus. Now, this video I took from a Vimeo of a national park in Africa. And I want to show it to you because I think they do a great job telling you about beekeeping and elephants.
Another method of coexistence with elephants takes advantage of their natural fear of bees.
Nós estamos a mitigar o conflito com a fauna bravia nas comunidades do corredor do fungo, criando vegetações de colmeias melhoradas.
Estamos aqui a transportar essas colmeias, que é para aumentar as colmeias que já temos lá, para diminuir o processo que é de conflito homem-animal.
First developed in Kenya and based on traditional knowledge, beehive fences work because elephants don't like getting stung by bees. When the elephants try to pass through a beehive fence at night to get to the farms, they shake the ropes and disrupt the beehive. Feeling threatened, the bees emerge and attack the elephants, and the elephants retreat back to the park.
Okay, so, and I also want to point out that the cool thing about putting in beekeeping to keep elephants out of your crops is, of course, the you also get honey out of it. Who doesn't want that? I wanted to give credit to this park here. They are on Vimeo, so if you're curious, please go check them out. Okay, moving on. So poachers and hunters target rhinos for their horns, which many people incorrectly believe have healing powers. Similarly, many elephants are killed for their ivory, which is often carved into artwork and viewed as a status symbol and monetary investment, particularly in Asia. Now, here's a statistic that I personally found it made me feel very hopeful, which is that the International Fund for Animal Welfare, it's a conservation charity, they surveyed 1,200 people living in 6 Chinese cities in 2007. And they found out that 70% of the people they talked to thought that ivory fell harmlessly out of an elephant's mouth, just like a child losing a tooth. But if you remember from when I showed you how that's actually their teeth and it's part in their skull, that it isn't like us. It doesn't fall out. But after IFAW volunteers told survey participants that removing an elephant's tusks kills the animal, more than 80% of the respondents said they wouldn't buy ivory. So for me, I find that very hopeful because it means that if we can just spread the word and put out the education, then we can help cut down on the demand. And if we cut down on demand, we cut down on poaching. If there's no monetary value to it, people aren't going to do it. Going back to the part about targeting the rhinos for their horns because people believe they have healing powers, I wanted to ask you guys if you knew what an elephant horn was made out of. And if if you're listening and you said keratin, you are correct. And what is keratin? And it's right here. It's fingernails. It's what our fingernails are made out of. So I think you can agree with me that fingernails and keratin do not have healing powers. So if you would like to look a little bit more into this issue on your own, I highly suggest going to the International Union for Conservation of Nature. They are the ones who put together the Red List. Now, the Red List is where you get, when you go to the zoo and you see that the animal you're looking at is endangered, they're the ones who gave that listing to that animal. Looking at this tiger right here, we now know that we have already lost 3 tiger subspecies: the Caspian, the Javan, and the Bali tiger. We all think we have tigers and it's wonderful, but we've actually already lost 3 of the subspecies. The Sumatran tiger alone only has 400 tigers left. One of the most important groups out there in terms of conservation is known as CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wildlife, Fauna, and Flora. Now, the CITES agreement was when a bunch of countries came together and agreed to prohibit trade in globally endangered species or their products. This happened because nearly half of Africa's elephants were killed. And because of the public outcry, they came together to ban international trade. And this had a huge positive effect and gave the species a chance to recover. As you can see, the numbers were going down in 2019, but it is still a huge problem because unfortunately, a rhino horn is worth more than the price of gold. So this begs the question, are we happy to suppose that our grandchildren may never be able to see an elephant except in a picture book? And that's where Stop Poaching Now comes in. Some of our core activities and accomplishments is sending our beneficiaries funding to help with ranger training and equipment. Right now, we're working with Game Rangers International, who help not only pay their rangers, but give them equipment like drones and ranger dogs. We help to educate, and we help try to preserve the habitat by creating reserves. I wanted to look at the ranger dogs again real quick because I always think this is very cool. Ranger dogs are trained to be used as a deterrent, to detect and track poachers, and also to apprehend poachers. Now, what's amazing is that they were referred to as an incredibly low-tech option, but they're incredibly successful. The success rate when a ranger has a dog with them goes up. Also, when we're looking at setting aside protected land, right now Stop Poaching Now is working toward raising funds for the beneficiary Project Rhino and their True Wild campaign. So perhaps you're feeling a little inspired and want to get involved yourself. If you're local to Los Angeles, I say there's some great groups here. There's FOLAR, Friends of the LA River. There is Tree People. You could look wider if you're not in Los Angeles. Find a local group that is working in conservation. And if you're a student, perhaps you want to consider a career in conservation. Because although I know we all want to help globally, we can help just as much by acting locally. And right now, if you're joining us for the first time, Stop Poaching Now is doing the E-Race Extinction event. This is our biggest event of the year to try to raise funds for beneficiaries in Africa. And we ask that you come and join us. On the 21st, we'll all be outside taking a walk for an hour in supporting animal conservation. And I hope you will come join us. And if you can't, if you want to do that, but also want to do something year round, here's something very simple. Amazon actually has, if you go to Smile, Amazon Smile, you can pick any charity of your choice. And every time you shop, a small portion of the proceeds will go to your wildlife charity of your choice. And of course, Stop Poaching Now would love it if you chose us. And please stay in touch. Here we are on Instagram and Facebook. And so we can keep you updated on our progress and what's happening with our beneficiaries throughout the year. And that is me. That is it for me, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for learning about these animals. And I hope that you leave today with a little bit of information that you can share with your friends and family. I hope to see you out there walking on the 21st. I'll be out in Santa Monica if you're local to Los Angeles. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.